Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Matt Pierce, and I am the Learning and Video Ambassador for TechSmith. I'm your host today. I'm so glad you guys could join us here in the Visual Lounge. We're, a little bit late here, just trying to get things kicking out, but that is okay. Before we get too far into things, a couple things we want to talk about, but I want to mention today that this week we launched another new course. The new course is Writing Helpful Help. We've got the author, Michelle Wiederman. She's going to be coming on next week. We're so grateful for that. Go check it out. If you're doing customer education, you're doing training, you're doing documentation, it's going to give you a lot of really great basic ideas on how to move things forward and to be able to, learn how to write actual helpful help, including stuff about using visuals. So check that out in the Academy new this week. Now, of course, we're here for a show and we've got a fantastic guest. Let me just set this up a little bit because I first saw Brian Fanzo a couple years ago at a very small conference. It was a small event, and when he started speaking at that event, I was instantly engaged. He had energy, he had candor, he had excitement that he just brought, and it was like, oh my gosh, this guy's the real deal, and he knew what he was talking about. And the thing that I absolutely loved, his message was clear. He said, press the damn button, and it resonated with me, and I knew I've got to do that better. And since that time, I've had the privilege to get to know Brian and, get to understand that he is a force for good. And he's got this infectious personality that just makes you want to be around him. And he draws you in. But more than that, not only does he draw you in, he's also the kind of person that's willing to help. And so we're so glad that he's here. Brian, if you look at his bio, you're going to see that he teaches all sorts of technology companies how to engage their customers. He's got a gift for bringing people together and online. He is, I think, self-proclaimed the oldest millennial there is. He's worked all over the world. We're so grateful to have Brian here. Thank you, Brian. Let's see. Hey, there you are. We're grateful that you're here, Brian. I'm a big fan of the work that you do. I know we've had a number of times to chat and talk. So just why don't you take a second though, introduce yourself to our guests and or to the people that are watching. If they haven't seen you, I know they can see you in the TechSmith Academy. Maybe they've met you all over, but tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Yeah. So, dad of three girls, proud dad of three girls. My background, rather unique in the fact I worked in cybersecurity for the Department of Defense. I then worked for a data center company. That was a cloud computing data center company. At both of those companies, my job was really to deploy training, learning and development, and drive collaboration. First around cybersecurity tools, second around cloud computing tools. Both of them very sexy, as you guys can imagine. And then for the last 6 years, actually 6 years last month, I've been an entrepreneur, keynote speaker up until March of this year. Then I became a virtual keynote speaker. I host a couple podcasts. And, for me, a lot of what I talk about now is video, of course, pressing the damn button. My aha moment happened with live video in 2013. The very first time I went live. I was in Barcelona on Meerkat, the app called Meerkat, and I pressed that button then, and I found the medium that was my preferred medium that allowed me to be myself, connect and have a good time with the world. So since then, I've done almost 4,000 live videos, like something 3,800 live videos since March of 2014. But yeah, other than that, that's right. I'm a digital futurist, yes, pager wearing millennial, and been crazy enough. I think the cool part is, and Matt, you and I talked this when we were at dinner the last time we met up. I've been a user of TechSmith since the very first job. So the pretty much the only tech, maybe Microsoft SharePoint. I don't use it now though. The only tech I've pretty much used from my entire career has been TechSmith products. So I'm a fan more so than anything else because it's been the longest tools in my tools. Even back then, I wasn't really a heavy Mac user. So I was Windows early on. So I can't even say, my company is iSocial Fans because it's iPhone, iPad, iSocial Fans. But with that being said, I wasn't even using a Mac back in the early days when I started using with TechSmith. So excited to be here.
Yeah, well, we're so glad that you've been with us along your journey. And I like I said in the intro, if you heard, the idea of pressing the button, it resonated with me. And I know you talk a lot about it because what you said with live, right? It allows you to connect. You found that medium. I'm curious, what does it really mean for you though? Because it's almost, it's a little tongue in cheek, right? Press the damn button, and it's obviously catchy. But for you, like, take that. Well, if we take that mantra and expand it, like, what does it mean as a kind of a philosophy?
So it's definitely, the button can be anything, right? And my new podcast, it's been fun because I've been interviewing people. I've had 10 episodes where I want to know what buttons they've pressed in their lives. And one of them was lacing up her tennis shoes and realizing she didn't have to wear heels so she could be herself. Another one was pressing the button to embrace his activism and dive in there. But when I look at it, I think of it this way, that the old adage, which I was raised with, was that you let your work do the talking for you. You don't put yourself out there. You let your work do the talking for you. People will discover you, and you'll be rewarded. And thanks to social media, technology, innovation, traveling, interstate roads, being able to, expand over the last 20 years, that adage is no longer works. If you are waiting for someone to discover you, if you're doing great things and you're trying to let your work do the talking for you, you're going to be drowned out by the bad news, the fake news, people selling unicorns and rainbows. And so the onus is now up to us to put ourselves out there, to press the button. Now, that button doesn't have to be even something digitally. Technically, that button might be, hey, I need to be more active in my local community so that people are aware of what my business might be doing. But that's where really it comes into me. It's really about, hey, let's put this out there. And so it's not, live video might have been the vehicle initially for me, but I would say it's fit into so many different other categories since then. And for me, it's much more than that. It's more of, like, I truly believe I'm like an optimist. I'm very passionate about this, but I believe the world is full of great people doing great things. And unfortunately, right now, we're stuck with a lot of noise around fake news and bad news. And we oftentimes give more attention to the bad news because that's what's trendy or what people share on social media. But if we had more great people and doing great things, putting their stories out there, pressing the button, I believe we would drown out a lot of the noise and we would be able to do some great things together. So that's really where it kind of bottles up to me. It's like the onus is on us. Like, if we want to change the world, we want to make the world a better place, we have to help other people that are doing great stuff put their stories out there rather than trying to fight the bad or the things that are, that are out there. And it's difficult. And I think that's also the caveat, right, Matt? Like, you and I have to, like, video, especially video, but like doing any of these things is awkward. Like, all of a sudden you have to start talking about yourself. And you're like, well, some people that's not natural, but other people it's not. And then, like, I have to talk into my phone sometimes, and I have to, so like all of this is not natural, but it's become a necessity if you are a good person doing good things. If you are not a good person and not doing good things, like, I don't care if you're going to wait around to be discovered. But I think for those good people doing good things, brands, businesses, leaders, it's all about pressing the button.
Yeah, well, there's a lot to unpack there. One thing it made me think about is in an interview we did, and Andrew Kahn and he works with TubeBuddy, he said something, and I quote, and I had used it for a presentation recently. He said that, it's not natural to look into the lens. But it's a choice. Just like, what you wear is a choice, and you have to get comfortable that you're going to take that choice. So that's one thing. But two, I love this that you've expanded this beyond just video. And I think for our audience, a lot of it, they're probably here like, okay, well, what does it mean for video? Because I know, like, this process it is weird, but you can get comfortable with it because if you keep going with it, keep doing with it, because like my first live stream I ever did was like in 2010. Like, so I've had a decade to get used to this idea and get more comfortable with it, more fluid with it. But I love the idea that you just got to do it, and you have to be responsible to show, like, no one's going to just pick up your work. You have to be out there showing your work. And that's I think that's a powerful thing. And for like anyone making screen videos or screenshots, or just don't be afraid to do it, right? At the end of the day, put yourself out there.
You said something that I thought was important, right? You're like, it takes a while to get comfortable. And I actually don't even know if that's the case. It takes a while to get being okay of being uncomfortable. Right. Like, that's more so of, and this is something you and I talked about this on our most recent call, that I thought for a lot, the audience has to remember, is that, like, I've done over almost 4,000 live streams, right? And I've created a ton of video. I mean, every week on LinkedIn, I've posted a video for almost 4 years, right? Like, I put out a ton of video, but weirdly enough, in the last month and a half, I've had the toughest time creating new videos for my new YouTube channel. And part of the reason was because I bought new equipment and I set up this new virtual studio. And all of a sudden, some of the variables that I got comfortable being uncomfortable with had changed. And I had no idea that it was going to change me. And I think that's something for that people have to kind of look at, is that like, you are never going to master this. Like I've talked to some of the biggest YouTubers in the world, and they will tell me like, man, Brian, now all of a sudden, as soon as this trend came to like jump cuts, or Brian, I moved from, a one shot camera to a 2-camera shot, and all of a sudden it changed everything. And so I think that's kind of the fun, is that you will never get perfect and you'll always adapt. And then, and it kind of comes into my 2 rules that I have with Press the Damn Button. The first one is perfection is a fairy tale. If your goal is to be perfect, you will never be great at the video medium ever. And then the second one is control. And control is an illusion is the second one. And I've been preaching this for many years, but ultimately, like, tech's going to come and go, things are going to happen. And so if you can embrace that perfection's a fairy tale and be okay that you can't control all the variables, the only thing you can control is yourself, then I think a lot of this becomes pretty fun and you get to adapt. And, for me, I've been learning a lot from TikTok recently on transitions and how to create content that is really outside of my normal creativity realm. But I absolutely love it. Like, I've never been more excited to create video content ever in my entire life than right now. And it has to do with TikTok, weirdly enough. And it's not TikTok videos I'm talking about. I'm talking about, like, I just produced 3 videos for 2 of them for Fortune 100 companies that they're promoting a session. And I use my TikTok skill set, the things I learned on TikTok from TikTok on both of these videos, right? And so I think that's kind of the beauty of this arena and where we're at.
Yeah, I love that because I think that's the thing that you said about, like, the tech's always going to change. It's so true, right? Like, because, and I think there's a couple things. One, it's always going to be progressing, whether you choose to or not. Or
Yes.
2, if you're getting better, if you're trying to get better, you're probably going to use different tech later on, right? You're going to
Yep.
add a camera, you're going to add lights. Please add a microphone. That's the first thing we always tell people to do. But you're going to have to learn what that means, and you can't just settle. I mean, you could, but if you want to get better and better at the medium, you're going to have to try to progress, right? Because that all comes with it. Now, there's lots of craft in there, lots of skill that's doesn't matter about the gear, but it does definitely feel like you're going to have to keep rolling with it, because the medium is going to change. And I can only imagine what another 20 years is going to bring for us in terms of what video will look like, what it will be like. Who knows? We'll all have little drones flying around us. Who knows, right? But we'll have to be okay with that.
But I think that's also something, the beauty of video, and everyone who's done it, anyone who's done video consistently, you could ask every one of them, and it's like, oh my, you feel it, right? You feel this element of like, I can do this even more, or I could do this differently, or I could, so like, even when someone's like, well, I just want to master my one domain, right? Maybe it's, screen capturing, maybe it's the idea of like, hey, I just want to do tutorials. But there is something about this idea that the screen does not limit us, right? Our ability to create something that empowers, that educates, that motivates, maybe that entertains. And so it's something beautiful about this, like, continuing evolution. But the other thing about and I thought of this as soon as you said this, the other thing about, like, the technology and the gear that I've found is that I will often push and pull, which means I will push myself to, I got a 360 camera last year, and all of a sudden I fell in love with 360 video, right? But when I fell in love with 360 video, I spent more time on 360 video, I realized that I needed to spend a little bit less time on some of the other things that I might have done on post-production. And all of a sudden I changed the tools that I was using for post-production back to the tools that help me out, keep things simple, right? And like, that's kind of that's the fun of this, is that, like, when you add a new camera, all of a sudden you might change the audio equipment that you're using, right? And then you finally fix the new audio, and now you're like, well, now I have less time to edit, or maybe less time to do strategy. And I think that's the magic. I think the people that do video consistently over a long period of time, and the person that stands out to me the most is Amy Landino, one of my really close friends. She's been uploading a video a week to YouTube for almost 11 years. I think it's 11 years next month. Every week for 11 years. And for the first 9 years of that, she had less than 25,000 subscribers. But she was figuring out the plan and figuring out her thing. And now, I mean, I think she'll hit maybe close to 500,000 subscribers by the end of the year. And she's a global star on that side. But the thing about her, and the thing about, like, what I think this all comes into, those that become consistent with video realize that you're going to change tech, change software, change gear, change your style, but it has to continually evolving. The key is figuring out how to set yourself up for success along the way each time, right? Like, what do you like to stand? Do you like to sit? Do you prefer a transcript, or do you want notes? Like, all of these things, once you start figuring out those things, like, throw me a camera, throw me a web camera, give me 5. I have 5 cameras here in my virtual studio, but there's something beautiful about video in that way. And just the context there, if you would have asked me in 2014, so you said you started live streaming in 2010, but for me in 2014, I did video for my work, but I thought there was no way I'm going to be someone that preaches video or talks about video, because I wasn't really comfortable on video, because I was worried about my stutter. I was worried because I talk with my hands, because the Italian comes out of me. I was worried about, there was lots of these things that like intimidated me about this medium. And so I know some people are like, well, that's nice. It must be nice for you and Matt, Brian, because you guys are video creators. Like 6 years ago, not only was I not a video creator, I wouldn't even watched one video that would have taught me how to be good on video. So, a lot of it is, kind of embracing it, learning as you go, and kind of figure this whole thing out.
Man, that's awesome, because I just wanted to go down that path too, right? Because I think there are a lot of people who are going to watch this or listen to the podcast later and say like, well, it's easy for Brian. Brian's got he's got all these things figured out. He knows what he's doing. Matt obviously does this every week, so no big deal. But for me, like, they might say to themselves or to others, well, for me, I just don't know how I can even get to that point. So I'm curious, besides just doing it, because I think that's easy to say, and it's like that's like the advice that everyone gives, like, just go do it, you'll be fine. Yeah. But what about your background, or what was it that allowed you to get to the point where you could even start down that path?
Beautiful question. I love this question. I think this is actually where most everyone goes wrong. I think when we're thinking about video, we often are like, okay, I know my audience likes long form video, and they like it being highly produced, and they want some production clips, they want lower thirds, and we plan all of this out, right? Because we realize that like there is an audience. But as soon as if we start with where our audience is, it immediately adds more variables and more excuses for us not to do it, and for us not to enjoy it. It's like telling someone like, you're gonna love snowboarding, but I'm gonna put you on a black diamond, the hardest thing, and I'm gonna give you a board that's too big for you. But I want you to do it and continue doing it and just keep pressing the button until you figure it out. And you're like, well, thanks. I'm gonna break my neck, or I'm gonna hate this so much that I'm gonna move far away from the mountains, right? Like whatever that might be, right? And so I actually believe you have to figure out what you do for video that makes you the most comfortable. For me, interestingly enough, was Google Hangouts. Google Hangouts was my gateway. And I did a Twitter chat and a Google Hangout show. We did 300 episodes of that show. We had it Monday and Wednesday every week for a couple of years. And I got used to being able to interview somebody, look at the Twitter feed and the chat, and I never felt pressure because I didn't have to control it wasn't just me on the screen, right? Like I got to interview someone, I make them the star, and I got to figure that out. And then when live video came, where I mentioned before I was in Barcelona, and I pulled out the selfie video, because Google Hangouts had taught me what things people wanted to hear from me, I didn't have to worry about what to share. Now I just had to figure out how to hold court when I'm solo on the show. And so I think that idea of like, just keep doing video till you're comfortable is great advice, but it doesn't move us. What I actually believe is try doing different forms of video, all different kinds, in ways that make you comfortable, and then lean in to what works, right? Like Instagram stories for me, like here's like a little tip for me. If I am having a tough time recording a video, and for me a tough time is like 3 takes. I know some people, like if I'm on a 3rd take, I'm frustrated because I'm just one of those people, like I don't need to be perfect. I don't have to, the 3rd take, I'm like, oh my gosh. I will oftentimes pull out my camera and do an Instagram story. And you're like, well, that doesn't make sense. Like, what? Because Instagram stories, for whatever reason, I've been doing them for so long, the medium feels comfortable to me. The 15 seconds feels comfortable. For one of my good friends, I know for her, every time she's stuck on video, she just needs to get on a Zoom call with somebody and just chat. Because when she gets off the Zoom call, she's like, oh yeah, I am good on video. And she's ready to rock and roll, right? So like, 2-prong advice there is, the first one is you're going to have to try lots of different form factors, right? Everything from, yourself in the small box doing a screen share, you being solo, you doing interviews, you doing 15 seconds, you doing talking head into your phone, you using a DSLR. Like, you're going to have to explore, because you don't know what you are good at until you try it. You also don't know what doesn't work until you try it, right? And that's like I said, the 3-take thing. Like, a couple of my clients that I had worked with, I mean, we were doing 12, 15 take videos for an event that I was speaking at, and I was there live with a video team, and they were like, Brian, we don't like these videos. Like, they're not what we want. Like, we're actually think this is kind of uncomfortable. And I was like, because you keep giving me a script and you make me keep doing all these takes. They're like, well, what do you want? I was like, I have a rule, and I have these are always on my desk. So for me, my rule is this: for every video, I do a rule of 5. I put 5 things that I want to make sure, 3 things that I want to make sure the audience take away, 1 that is a story that I think is relevant, and 1 that is usually a piece of self-deprecating humor or something that I'm gonna like make fun of. And I put those 5 in every video. A 3-minute video, 30-minute video, I have 5 things that I do for every video. And if you give me this, I can make sure I cover all of the things. I can mention the brands. I can talk about the sponsors. But if you give me a script or you make me retake it a whole bunch of times, I lose what makes me good on video. And I think for so many people, that is such the case, where if you can't figure out what makes you good on video, you have to keep trying. But then once you figure it out, you kind of have to be like the owner of that. And I'm guilty many of times for giving in and trying to create video other people's way, because they're like, Brian, you're so good on video, this will be easy. And then the end product isn't good. So I'm not sure if that exactly answers the question, Matt, but like, that to me is such a big piece, right? Like, you will not know what type of video you like creating until you try it.
Well, I mean, I love that advice, right? Because you don't know. And like, I know there's lots of videos types that I've struggled with. I found that like doing interviews, I mean, I had the chance to interview you and others at Video Marketing World, and we put those in the Academy, and that worked great. We've done it other times. I found like this is a very natural setting for me, and I feel very comfortable. Whereas there are times when I'm just, like Instagram, TikTok, nope, I don't feel comfortable with that.
Right.
It's I maybe it's part of the, it's so easy for me to put on my TechSmith kind of shirt and be like, I'm TechSmith. It's easy for me to represent. Whereas real Matt, Matt outside of TechSmith feels a little bit boring, a little bit stifled,
Yeah, but if I had to dissect that, right? Like the TechSmith shirt that you're putting on, right? Like, and I own this. I love that you went down this way. Like, we all have to find that piece of us, right? Like, because video is not natural. Every year since 2015 has been the year of video. I'll put my futurist hat on. Next year will also be the year of video, right? Like, this is not like breaking news, right? Like, but like the video, like, I mean, we talk about Gary Vaynerchuk all the time, but like, go back and watch Wine Library TV season 1 and 2. It is painful and miserable content, like painful content. Now the guy can't, like, he literally like trips out of bed with a camera in front of his face, right? But like, there's something, you have to find your armor, right? Maybe it is hey, when I'm wearing TechSmith, I know what I'm going to talk about. Like, I would actually argue, Matt, like for you, there's a whole other side of you that, thanks to being friends with you, that I get to know your journey at TechSmith. I know, the entire team and all that. Like, I would love access into that. Like, so for me, I would coach you into being, okay, what about the TechSmith, putting on that cape? What about that makes video natural for you? And a lot of it's like, I know the strategy. I know my target audience. I know my stuff when I'm on this, right? Okay, well, let's take those things. Let's strip out the mechanics of TechSmith, and let's think about those in your personal life. And I know that's not really where we're going with this, but like, right. Everyone that's watching this, like, you're going to find, and some people might be like, I'm not an extrovert. It has nothing to do with any of that. Like, I always, like, the funny thing is, a lot of times you'll find it. I've said this for a while. A lot of people came to me and were like, man, Brian, like, everyone's jumping on Zoom. Like, is video really going to be that popular of a thing? And I was like, actually, I'm going to say it's going to be more popular, because here's what people are learning with Zoom. Some people are getting more comfortable on video. Other people are realizing video isn't just something that kids do and it's easy and it's pressing a damn button and anyone can create video. All of a sudden, I believe the value of video, what it takes to create consistent video over time. And you might notice I keep mentioning the word consistent, right? Mm-hmm. Anyone can create a random viral video on a skateboard drinking ocean spray, which happened on TikTok just this week, which was just beautiful. Like, anyone can get those one moments. But if you really want to in my opinion, take your brand to the next level, your business to the next level, make your training engaging and interactive and scalable. Video is the answer. That's the only answer. But the piece of that that is so important is that consistency. But like, you're not going to find that like whole vehicle until you're able to explore like what that is in your cave. And like, weirdly enough, like for me, like this is so for this interview, because I know Matt, and like me sitting in a chair doing live video is not natural. It's natural for me. I like to be on a stool or standing up.
Yeah.
But I've gotten some feedback recently that, Brian, you're so loud and so passionate and so intense that like you standing during an interview, a little intimidating. And I was like, thank you for the feedback. I'm always looking for feedback. Let me see if I can start to train myself to be a little bit better in my chair. Now I'm like kind of like jumping out of my chair, but like, so I think that's something that too, that like we have to kind of look at, because there is a tendency to go, man, video must be easy for them. Or just because they've been doing video, or wow, Brian found video. Like I will say my business and my personal life would not be where it is today if it wasn't for video. And that's someone that 6 years ago would have never done any video, right? Like, just like wrapping a head around that to me is why this is all like, and the reason I'm passionate about it, it comes back to that very original soapbox that I went on when I introduced myself, right? Like, I want great people that are doing great things to put their messages out so we can amplify it and help the great stuff stand out. And I believe the number one, most intimate, most personalized way to do that in any digital medium is video.
Yeah, I love that. And
you're fired up, man. You got me fired up.
Look, it's time to make the video, right, Brian? And everyone, and I think the cool thing is that all these things that you've said, I know that there's challenges in that, right? I don't want to pretend it's easy, but I know it's possible because I'm on that journey, right? And you're on that journey, and I've seen a lot of other people do this. And I love that you brought up Gary Vaynerchuk, his journey. But like, I look at some of the people that we've interviewed, and you can see those interviews in the TechSmith Academy, like Sean Cannell, right? Over 1 million subscribers on YouTube. And first of all, I always like to clarify something with our audience, that we talk about YouTubers or people on YouTube, but I never think of them, don't think of them that way. Think of them as really smart business people. Everyone I've met that's successful are really good business people who happen to do videos on YouTube. But like, you look at their beginning stuff and it's not good. My first stuff, I've got my first video I've ever made for TechSmith as part of my job interview. And it's a screen video and it's terrible. But that's actually, I want to diverge from this for a second, because you brought up TikTok, you brought up Instagram stories. LinkedIn just has released a stories platform. And what I'm curious about, Brian, because I know you're on the cutting edge of this, I think yours might have been one of the first stories on LinkedIn that I saw. I'm curious from a kind of the business perspective about these, because obviously I think a lot of us, if we're in the instructional design, training, technical writing world, we're probably looking at Instagram and TikTok and saying, our audience, that's not our audience, which is fine. But LinkedIn, all of a sudden, there's opportunities there. Why should someone be looking at those? I know you said it's kind of your easy go-to, like, okay, I know I can do it if I do it here. But for the rest of us who maybe haven't even made one, what is it that's there for us that we should be thinking about or looking at? There's some other things you said I can tie back in, but I'm curious what you think.
No, I like this. I like where you're going with that. This is a kind of a conversation too, because so like you might, like I talked about how many live videos I've done, right? Like I've done so many live videos. Here's a little caveat. LinkedIn is my number one platform for focus on business. It is my favorite. It's the only one I have notifications on my phone. The only social network, and I'm on every social network. For those that don't know me, I'm on everything. The only one I have on my phone is LinkedIn. I've had LinkedIn live access since before it went live, and I've done 3 LinkedIn lives total. So when you think about this, like, wait a second, Brian, you've had LinkedIn live, and like wouldn't you just be blasting it out everywhere? But I am a business person, and I am also someone that likes to look at it and say, okay, what is working for me on LinkedIn? Produce videos that are 3 to 5 minutes long that I take while holding my phone. And I always start by saying, what's up, LinkedIn? Like, that's my catch on LinkedIn. What I evaluated on LinkedIn when they had live video was most of the people on my LinkedIn network didn't even realize that video was a regular thing you could post, right? They would show up once a week. That's why I have notifications on, right? And so for me, I was like, man, if I go live on LinkedIn, I'm not going to talk to a whole bunch of other marketers about marketing, and none of them are going to hire me. So do I want to jeopardize the reach and the value that I've got from organic LinkedIn video by just going live and pressing the damn button on LinkedIn Live, right? So I did not, and I kept waiting and waiting, and just within the last month, I've decided to do LinkedIn Live now because I have a more methodic, I have a strategy behind it. I'm working with the LinkedIn events team on something. So that's part of it. But the other piece of, let's say LinkedIn stories, right? Like when I look at all of these texts, like I love to push all of the envelopes myself. It's why I'm on every social network. But if I was going to advise, when I coach people I'm coaching right now, I don't ever follow my rule on every network. I tell them that they need to be strategic with the networks they're choosing to create on. Now, I will recommend you want to listen and pay attention to a network that you're not creating on, just so that you get like a perspective that is unique. I mean, I was on TikTok for almost a year before I posted anything, which is very rare for me on a platform because I can't sing or dance, but I have no problem making a fool of myself and trying out things. But I was really like, ooh, TikTok, I want to understand this creator world, right? Then I created an account, and for 6 months I spent researching who was the creators that surprised me. And then I interviewed 31 of them in November of last year because I wanted to understand their mindset of why they created on TikTok and not on Instagram, not on YouTube, not on wherever. And then once I learned that, I'm taking that back to my business and putting that in the fold. So my recommendation is, like when LinkedIn Stories came out, I was all kinds of excited. All of my marketer friends were joking like, wow, like LinkedIn 3 years late. And like, oh my God, like the last thing we need is LinkedIn Stories. Because what they were thinking about was watching their fellow marketers do LinkedIn Stories. What I was thinking about was, what are the things that have worked for me on LinkedIn? Humanizing my brand. We hear about this. We hear the word humanizing the brand all the time. Like some people that preach humanizing the brand told me they did not. They were so mad that Instagram or that LinkedIn had stories. And I was like, because it's an easy medium for us to humanize our brand. Like, what's your reasoning for not liking it? Like, oh, I don't want to create stories on other platform. I'm like, oh, so it's not that LinkedIn got stories. It's that your current workflow and production and your desire to embrace something new makes you bash that thing, right? Like we have to be very careful in this world we're in right now to understand why someone doesn't like something. But in the business sense of it, I like to break things down in all of those ways. And I can tell you, TikTok became my love at the moment because it's inspired me to create my business content differently. Not because I want to go TikTok viral or because the TikTok videos I create are of any value, right? Like and yes, you can make money on TikTok, and yes, you can make money on a lot of these other platforms. But I do look at it as like I'm a .com, not a .org, right? And I don't think it always comes down to like where's my audience at? Because Matt, you said that, and that's something I also want to just touch on real quick. That way of thinking, I think we have to shift a little bit, right? I'm okay with my audience not being on a platform. Because remember, I'm a business person. If the people that influence my customers or my audience are on the platform. You hear what I'm saying? Okay, so what I mean by that is right now it's the college age to like 33 years old on TikTok that a lot of them are engaging with my content on TikTok. And what I know is that they are becoming into positions that work for event companies or brands or businesses where they take a management role, where they might be sitting in a meeting where someone says, do you know of a speaker that can talk about digital empathy, right? Well, the person that's going to write my check, the person that's going to sign off on that is not on my TikTok. But the person that they might listen to, that's like, oh, I got this bleeding edge guy. He's old, he's 39 years old. He's old. I've engaged with him on so like that's the piece that we also have to think about. And the other part of it is pulling out I keep using this word, but this concept, but like strip the mechanics out of it and ask yourself, by creating on this platform, does it allow me to build trust, build trust, maintain trust, or scale trust? If it does, I think it's worth doing, right? Like I think we're all in the business of trust. Video is the number one vehicle for delivering that. And the question you have to ask yourself, does it fit any of those? And for me, LinkedIn Live did not for the first year. Now it might more because the audience has become more mature, more understanding of those platforms. So that's really where I fit when I look at all these platforms. I kick the tires, I test them out, but you would be probably more surprised than anything that I end up leading people away from some things more than I lead them to it. And if I lead them to it, oftentimes it's like, just listen and learn. I mean, like the person who has taught me this transition piece that I like, because I go into a cartoon that I have, like I come out of it. The person who's done that is a construction worker who started creating TikToks for fun and he actually said he created TikToks. He was tired of dating apps. So he just started creating TikToks. Well, then he started getting used to and playing with all the features, and all of a sudden his process is something I've never heard anyone do before. I discovered him, and so like think about that. How cool is that? That like a construction worker that fell in love with video is teaching me, who does video and helps people do video, how to create video differently. And I would have never been exposed to that unless I would have had the open mind to kind of consume there on TikTok.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's there's like that was just a masterclass in so many things, Brian. I appreciate it because, I think I love this idea of thinking differently about the way you're creating, thinking about your audience differently. And bringing all those things together is going to make you, you can become more successful in different ways because you're doing that. I know it's so easy to get caught in that rut of I'm just going to make the same thing over and over and over and over. And it goes back to what we said earlier about pushing yourself, right? Trying the new things and give and take on the technology. And if you're doing more on one thing to learn, maybe you're doing less on the other. But I do think it's interesting because, we're here, like this show we're on Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. We're doing that very specifically. We've got purposes for that, been trying to figure out what I'm going to do with the LinkedIn stories. But I do think, you bide your time, you look, you watch, you learn, and you find the people that are doing interesting things and see what you can take from that. So that's all amazing advice. And I hope everyone that's listening to Brian today, I hope you guys are thinking about this. My only disappointment is I'm not writing notes, but I'm going to go back and re-listen to it because you've got so many of these tips and ideas I think are really good.
Fred said earlier about, and this is something I thought was interesting. He said, the idea of like liking to look at yourself on video, right? Like, and like for those that have ever worked with me, for the longest time, I never edited my own videos because I refused to watch myself back because I would have to retake it, right? Like, oh my God, Brian, slow down. Stop talking with your hands. Look into the camera, Brian. Like, and so I had a process where I would create 2 or 3 videos myself and I would send them to my team. They would edit it and decide which one they liked the most. And then I would watch it, right? Most recently, Zoom just added a new feature where you can actually turn off your own video so you don't have to look at yourself on video, right? Like, so, but I think there's also there's some tricks you can make, right? Like the idea that like making your video small, like I do that when I'm presenting. Like I make my video underneath my web camera. Like I'm talking like micro machine level because I want to be able to just glance and look in the camera. If I can see me, I'm gonna look down at my eyes, right? And then there's some things that you can do to get comfortable on that. You also just kind of have to like embrace your own like imperfections in a way. Green screen. So funny enough, I was the anti-green screen person because I preach authenticity, trust, transparency, and vulnerability, right? Pretty much green screen is the idea is that you're masking all of that, right? Like that's kind of what a green screen comes into. But I've always felt that like with any technology, with anything that's out there, you want to make sure that there's a reason for your using it. You're not using it for technology's sake. I think it's the number one mistake that we as creators make, we as businesses make, right? Like we just use a technology because we think we need to or we have to. And it wasn't until I moved into this house and I realized, wow, this middle section of my curtains and so like I have this like little makeshift stage that you guys might be able to see there.
Yep.
And so I'm giving these virtual events. And I was like, you know what? What if I was able to put a green screen down the middle and I could really play into that? So I could put some things behind there and like have some fun with it. And then the light bulb went off. And so in transparency, I'm a brand ambassador for a brand called iOgrapher. They're the ones that do, I have a bunch of their stuff here. They have cases for your iPhone so you can live stream, you can mount your microphone on top. So iOgrapher is the name of the brand of that green screen. It is amazing. It is a portable one. It folds down into a carry case. I just pull it up. It's freestanding. So like right there behind, like here, we'll even, like this is just a freestanding green screen by itself.
Cool.
Thing I like about it is it's high quality. I don't have to overlight it. My lights are all the way back here. It also is pulled very tight, so I don't have to worry about, like I've had 3 other green screens sent to me from other companies. And unfortunately, I've never used them on a consistent basis because of those other things. So yeah, that's where those are at there. And I'm happy to, I have an Amazon influencer store that you guys can check. I have all the gear. I have a review of all the gear that I'm using there. But yeah, so far I fell in love with this green screen. And tell you what, we're using Ecamm for this presentation, for this interview. Ecamm's green screen plugin for live videos is beautiful. Works super easy. I just did a video recently where I jumped into Back to the Future, so I put Back to the Future on there, and I ran and jumped into it, with some fun Camtasia editing, and it was so easy just because to throw it up there. So I think that's the tough part about green screens. You have to find the right tools, right technology, the right space for you, like the distance, how far it is behind you, all of those type of things.
Yeah. So just another fun quick question. Someone that saw your shelf back there and was curious how many iPhones you've bought. All the boxes.
Yes. So funny enough, someone asked me that about 2 weeks ago. We went back and figured it out. So I've had every iPhone starting with the iPhone 3. So I had at the time, like early on, I had a BlackBerry, and so my brother had an iPhone 2, and I was still BlackBerry. But I've had every one: iPhone 3, iPhone 3GS. I mentioned earlier, like, don't buy technology for technology's sake. Sometimes you don't want to, don't do what I do what I say, not what I do. Yeah, iPhones is a weakness of mine. I get the newest one as soon as it comes out. I have the same AT&T plan from this first 3GS. So this is my first. Yeah, this is the iPhone 3GS. I mean, look at this. Look at this bad boy. I mean, like, look at that. Oh, it's upside down. Look at that. I mean, that thing is. I mean, that's a beaut. But yeah, that's the 3GS. But I still have the same AT&T plan, so that's allowed me to kind of scale up. But yes, I've had way more iPhones. Now, interestingly enough, in that whole idea, I've only owned 2 MacBooks since 2012. So I might buy a whole bunch of iPhones, but I actually have both of the MacBooks here in front of me right now that are actually in use. So I'm a tech, over calculate on one way, and other ways I a little bit nostalgia, like the tech that I have.
No, that's it's fantastic, and it's fun to see all those all the phones that come. So you'll be excited for next week, I'm sure. We know what Brian's going to be doing as Apple has their next announcement. Brian, we're getting close on our time here. I'm curious as we wrap up. I mean, we've talked about so many things and a lot of really great advice that's very actionable for anybody that goes and listens to this. What are your final kind of parting words or thoughts? Because I mean, I think we've covered a big gamut of ideas, right? But when it comes to boil it all down, for folks who are not, their goal is not to be a speaker. They're not trying to put themselves out there for the world necessarily. They're just trying to do a good job in their day job, help people learn, help people understand products that they're working for, things like that. What advice do you give them kind of as our parting thinking here?
I think this is one I like. My brother, I have 2 brothers. One is a venture capitalist, commercial real estate agent, real estate owner of multiple companies. Other one works in audio video production, and neither one of them love social media. Neither one of them love video. And recently, I've started to get them into making more video. And part of it came into this idea that like when we think about not only telling our story, but like building relationships. Collaborating with other people, giving ourselves job security just in case a pandemic or something happens, right? What are the things that we can do that can help us continue to progress, also highlight who we are? And that's, to me, that is video, right? So it's not about like we mentioned YouTube. I am not good on YouTube. My YouTube channel is not anything to be bragging about. YouTube is a platform that requires a certain strategy that has not fit my business objectives. So I just haven't given that its attention, and I think that's okay. And like, if you want to just be better at video, so you can create videos for your boss, or maybe you just want to get better at videos so that you can be better on these Zoom calls because you're working from home for the first time. Whatever these are, they're all okay. I just want us to take the perspective I want us to think, and I think this is where we sometimes make a mistake is that you're not doing video to solve an online or a virtual problem. It's not a Band-Aid for what we're doing virtual. I actually look at it as the great amplifier of everything, right? Like video, and I mentioned this before tongue in cheek, but like if what you're doing is not good and you are not good at what you do and you put it on video, it just means more people are going to see it. But if you are good at what you do, or you love what you do, or you have hobbies, like for my brother, like my brother had no interest in video, but his middle daughter is getting really, really good at soccer. And I was like, Jeff, you need to start creating some videos with her. And all of a sudden I looked at his videos like, what's going on? He's like, yeah, man, I started doing more video around work and I learned some new techniques. And now I'm going to put those with my daughter's video. And I was like, you know what's going to happen, Jeff? I was like, she's going to get recruited to a top-notch college because she's going to have a bunch of B-roll and a bunch of good video that you created, during these times. And so I think video is that piece. And I think last but not least is that I know we all don't have this idea that like I have to change the world or I have to put everything out there, but I think it has to be said. Like we can't ignore that we are living in the most divided times, especially in the U.S., that we've ever had. And it's not about. I don't believe it's about doing it for my kids. I think it's about doing it for me and the rest of my life to tell great stories and share all the things that we have going on. And so maybe my call to action for everyone that's out there is open your perspective to maybe different ways to create video. And then last but not least, ask yourself, and this might go to Matt as well, right? For Matt creating, Instagram stories or whatever it may be. Ask yourself, am I not sharing things or I'm not comfortable sharing things on video during this style because it doesn't fit me today? Or is it because it didn't fit me 5 years ago and I haven't really came back and revisited it? Like if you would have told me I would talk about ADHD, my divorce, and being a co-parent dad, like those aren't things that I would have been like 5 years ago I would have ever shared, right? But I kept having to ask myself questions like, how do I build trust? What does my audience want to care about? And if you keep asking yourself these questions, you might be surprised. You might all of a sudden want to be able to share something you never thought of, or you might discover something you never shared of. But press the damn button is a mantra that says put it out there. But once you press the button, figure out what works, and then lean into what works. It's not about throwing a bunch of crap into the world. We got plenty of crap, plenty of content, plenty of noise. But there is something to be said. There's something beautiful about. Like to me, it's like the reason that the TikTok one is so great is like the number one people I follow are stay-at-home moms, construction workers, nurses, and lawyers. Those are my 4 favorite creators on TikTok. And it is a beautiful thing to watch these beautiful, amazing humans that have great stories that are doing just these wonderful things find a way to tell the world about their story. And that's what keeps me inspired.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that, Brian.
The way that I think of this, and so right now I have 2 Instagram accounts. One's Brian Fanzo Speaker. One is iSocialFans, right? So I have one that was speaker, one. And part of the reasoning was I had preached for the longest time that you have to keep the kind of 2 worlds together because people do business with you. And then someone asked me, like, have you tried an Instagram account for only speaking? And I was like, I haven't, so I should try it. So 2018, November, I decided to try out that, doing a different one, right? So for me, it was a kind of exploring. But the way that I answer that question is that it's all about managing the expectations for your audience. If the channel is going to have a variety of different content, own that, put it out there. Do not try to disguise it. Do not try to blend it in. If you're like, man, I don't think these audiences have enough crossover. Like I created 8 Twitter accounts at one time because I believed I had 8 different ways of tweeting. Now I'm narrowed down to 3, which I've had the same 3 since that original 8. And I have one that's Pittsburgh Sports. And I am very loud and obnoxious on Pittsburgh Sports on the weekends. And I realized that didn't need to be on my other 2 channels. But I had other ones where I reviewed tech gear. Another one where I played poker. Another one where I gave I broke down documentaries and kind of insights on that. Another one where I talked about Jeeps. And I realized a lot of those other topics fit very well into the brand of iSocialFans. But there were a couple ones that kind of left a little bit different. And so I think here's my end on this is if you don't have a niche, you have to do a strategy different than everyone else. So if you have a niche, and I want to clarify, if you have a niche or a niche, own it, double down, make it your thing, go all in. I am all for it. I'm not against niches. But there's a lot of us that are like me that don't have one, right? Or that struggle to just stay focused on one thing. If you struggle to not have focus on one thing, here's the magic sauce. When someone has a niche, people remember you by what you do. When you do not have a niche, they will be confused by what you do. Therefore, they will remember you by who you are. Therefore, the consistency, which is what a niche ends up being, the value of that niche is that consistency of association with a topic. That has to be with you. Like for me, a lot of it has to do with my hats. Like crazy enough, like I'm the backwards hat wearing guy, and they might not be sure which channel I'm doing what or what I'm talking about, but they know me. They know I'm a girl dad. They know I wear my backwards hat and I talk fast, right? Like so that's the advice there is like you have to it's the Steve Jobs, right? Like Steve Jobs, the black shirt, right? Like I mean, some people say the mom jeans. Black shirt, mom jeans, whichever that he was wearing. But like that's where there's a big difference. If you are going to be multifaceted, you do have to make people remember you based on who you are. If you have a niche, you can allow the niche to be that vehicle. But I love that question. Like, actually, the number one line in my TikTok bio is CEO Team No Niche, because if you look at my TikTok, it is a most random variety of life, but it's part of the fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you, Brian, for answering that question. And it's great advice, because I think a lot of people struggle with that, right? Because they're not sure where they're taking their personality, their brand in terms of their online presence. And so
Yep.
I love that advice. I think it's great. Hopefully that helps you out on your journey. And Brian, I can't thank you enough for joining us today for the broadcast. We really always great to catch up with you. Great to see you and chat with you. You always have so many great insights. And guys, go check out Brian's stuff. You can find Brian, iSocialFans, brianfanzo.com. Go check his, if you guys are looking for speakers, Brian is an excellent one. He's a great MC. Let's see, he can talk about video. He can consult with you. He's got all sorts of things that he can do. So, Brian, thanks again for your time today.
My pleasure. Yep.